All right. Here we are now to do a commentary on Gabriel Knight 1. If you watch the original gameplay, there's two versions of it, right? I have the one that has the days individually split up, so you can watch day 1 separate from day 2 or whatever. So if you're looking for something specifically in a specific day, you can easily get to where you need to get. And then there is also the compiled all together, all 10 days in one video, which now makes this, if I'm not mistaken, the longest gameplay video I have on my channel. Gabriel Knight 1 weighed in all combined at 11 hours. I think the previous game that held the record was Lighthouse, which I think was 10 hours and some change. So Gabriel Knight 1 definitely is a much longer game, and I had a lot of trouble with this game. Not so much in playing the game itself, because I've played Gabriel Knight 1 numerous times. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it is committed to memory. So a lot of this game was muscle memory for me. Just like all my other games, when I play this, even though I've played these multiple times, a lot of these games are muscle memory, but I don't use a walkthrough when I play it. Sometimes I'll go back and look at a walkthrough to see what I may have missed. Especially with Sierra games, it's really easy to tell if you've missed something. So for example, if you watched the Gabriel Knight game, I ended up somehow only being 1 point off. I have no idea where that 1 point is, but it's so interesting because when I did Codename Iceman, I did not look at a walkthrough. I'd played it not too long ago, like 5 years ago. So a lot of it was still ingrained in my head. But when I finished Codename Iceman, I was like 60 points from the maximum point. So that's a considerable amount of points. But that was one game where I was just happy to have finished it for my channel, and I did not actually look at a walkthrough to see where I may have missed those points. I was just like, okay, I beat Codename Iceman. I'm just gonna move on. Glad I got to the end again. Not even worried about the fact that I'm like 60 points off from the total amount of points. But Gabriel Knight 1, I somehow only ended up 1 point off. I think like the total that you can reach is 342, and I ended up with 341. Part of the reason probably why I got so close to getting all the points in Gabriel Knight 1 is if you watch the original, like I click on everything, like I look at everything for like the details that the game provides, and I talk to everyone. Like I use the entire conversation tree. So for example, right now we are talking to Grandma, and you know, a lot of games sometimes if the character doesn't have anything to say, they'll just say something like, "Oh, I don't know about that," and that's it. You don't really get much out of it. But like for example, when you ask Grandma about the voodoo murders, she'll actually, she doesn't provide any new information to Gabriel. Nothing she says unlocks anything else. But the fact that she goes into, oh, isn't it horrible? I can't stand to watch the news because, these voodoo murders, it's, such a different time than when I grew up and stuff like that. So these responses that they put into the game fleshed out all of these characters and made it feel far more realistic and engaging. Obviously, it's semi-realistic because it's taking place in a real world modern setting, but the characters are very, very engaging because they have so much to say, even if they're not providing points or another clue for Gabriel. All these characters will typically have something to say. So one of the things, for example, is snakes. Snakes, you figure out, are a large part of this voodoo thing that is going on. And you can go to Grandma and say, "Hey, what do you know about snakes?" And she'll be like, "Oh, like I grew up, I used to be cottonmouths and stuff like that." And everything she's talking about has nothing to do with voodoo murder specifically. But the fact that she has a response to it is so great. And they do that with multiple characters in this game. So one of the things you find out is, for example, you pick up a magnifying glass, you read the newspaper, and you pick up some tweezers at the very start of the game. So Gabe already has that, and he's kind of moseying around. And Grandma says you should visit the grave of our family, and you talk to her about your family, and you go to the Marie Laveau cemetery, or I'm sorry, her tomb, and she's got writing all over it. Now, if you look at my channel update, I can't remember what it's called, but it was right before I played this one. It says something about photos included. Gabriel Knight 1 had such a huge impact on me that when it came out, and by the time I finished the game, I had decided at some point in my life, I want to go to New Orleans. I want to learn more about New Orleans. I want to learn more about voodoo. But this game created a fire in me to want to visit New Orleans. And I want to say it was like 2008. I was finally able to go to New Orleans with my wife, my friends, everything like that. And so in one of my channel updates, I take a number of pictures that are related to Gabriel Knight. Like I go to the Jackson Square Circle thing. I went to the cathedral. I went to a couple different spots that are mentioned or seen in the Gabriel Knight game. And I will say they were pretty close into how everything looks. The Jackson Square thing was a little off because they show that, inside the Jackson Square, there's no trees really on those circles where you see like the entertainers and stuff like that. Most of the entertainers are actually outside of Jackson Square, between Jackson Square thing and the cathedral. So there's a huge sidewalk there, and that's where most of these entertainers and performers would naturally be. But like normally around like what you're seeing here, there's like trees growing all around. So here we are in this part of the game where Gabe walks around and he sees a mime and leads the mime over to the officer, who then basically starts making ape gestures, and Gabe is able to basically listen in on the walkie-talkie over the officer's motorcycle, and he learns where the murder scene is. Once he does that, that unlocks the scene to the murder scene. And then this beautiful woman who just drove away in the video comes by, and her and Gabe lock eyes, and they seem to almost recognize each other, and they fall in love, whatever, or in lust, whatever you might call it. It's love, because you'll find out that they are, in a way, connected to each other. So you have this magnifying glass. This is one of those things that you would not know, probably, if it was your first time playing it. But what you want to do is you want to take your book and put it over the symbol on the dirt. But also, there is snake scales, and it's to the grass, it's right by the tree. There's an area of grass that's kind of pressed down. You need that snake scale to later compare it to something else to convince Mosley to reopen the case. But finding that snake scale, if you don't know that you should be looking for it, is very difficult. So I don't even remember how I originally knew to look for it. When these games first came out, I often bought the hint book, not to use it like the first time I was playing it, but often I would try to beat these games on my own and then do what I basically do now. But back then, when these games first came out, because I am a very old person here, I was around when these games first came out. So when like Gabriel Knight 1 came out, I often bought the hint book with it, because there was like really no internet back then, which I know a lot of you who may be young and watching this are like, what, a world without the internet? What are you talking about? It's true. It's very true. We used to use dial-up modems to call one another's computers and log on to it's called a BBS, but a bulletin board system and stuff like that. And Sierra even had a bulletin board system. So if you look at some of their manuals, they'll say you can call the bulletin board system, log in, stuff like that. So frequently, I'd buy the hint books along with it. So I imagine at some point, I probably, after beating the game, not being able to reopen the case, probably looked at the hint book and said, that's what it is. And it's probably stuck with me since. And having played this game a number of times repeatedly, because to me it's like such a fantastic game. It's one of Sierra's best games, I think, because the art is great. The story is amazing. And like I said, because they give characters responses to almost all of the conversation tree, that makes this whole game feel so much alive. So definitely one of Sierra's best games, hands down. And the fact that you also have some amazing voice talent. So you have Tim Curry, who is doing the voice of Gabriel Knight. You have Mark Hamill, who we know as Luke Skywalker, among other different things. Mark Hamill has done the voice of Joker. Mark Hamill has an extensive history of voice acting as well. He just hasn't done only Star Wars. He's done so much. If you look at his IMDb page, you will see he's done a lot of work. But obviously, most people, when they hear Mark Hamill, think of Star Wars. But a lot of people also think of him as the Joker. So you have him as Mosley, and then Grace, who is Gabe's assistant, is Leah, and I believe her last name is pronounced Remy or Remini. It's Remini, I think. Remini. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm really horrible with names. But so the three of them make up an incredible amount of talent. But even the other characters in this game, like Gabe's grandmother, is great. She's so great. And then the officer who is at the front desk, he is amazing. He's actually probably one of my favorite characters because he sounds so annoyed all the time that I really enjoy just talking to him and like seeing if he gets frustrated about stuff. It's really, really fun. But this game is really, really well done. So you have one thing I will say. So this guy that we're talking to here, who works at this shop, it seems like he would be involved in the voodoo thing, as you begin to find out. But it's actually this guy here, Dr. John, spoiler alert, who is heavily involved in the voodoo stuff, and not in just knowing it. So like when you talk to him, he knows all about the history of voodoo and stuff like that, more of how the old voodoo worked, and you can ask him those type of questions. But the guy at the Dixieland store, which was the guy previous to Dr. John, he calls you a French name, which Gabe goes on to try to find out, like, do you know what this means? And a lot of people are like, no. And if you ask your grandmother, she says it means blank something blank. And eventually you find out it means goat without horns, which, okay, what is a goat without horns? And as you go along, you find out a goat without horns means a human sacrifice. So when someone says we need a goat without horns, what they're implying is they need a human sacrifice. So I thought that was kind of cool. But yeah, Gabriel Knight 1. Let me talk about another thing. So this game, when I originally said, you know what, I'm going to play Gabriel Knight 1 for my channel, I have the originals on CD and stuff like that, which I've already talked about. But I also buy them on GOG or Steam, wherever they show up. I tend to purchase it just to show support of this game or these games, like anything Sierra. Pretty much anything Sierra, Surtec, or any of those games that I really loved. And so I downloaded the GOG version, which I'd paid for, and I launched it. And unfortunately, GOG uses ScumVM. And this isn't a knock towards ScumVM, but a lot of times when they use ScumVM, two things happen. Sometimes they don't include all of the files. So this is noticed in Carandia. So if you play Legend of Carandia from GOG, they extract some of the files and just take them out and make the game be able to run. But if you want to run it in DOSBox because you don't want to use ScumVM, you can't, because some of the critical files that you need are missing. So when I was running Gabriel Knight 1, the other downside to ScumVM is it does not have a native way to capture the video, which, not a problem. I happen to have made another series, so if you go to Neverending Nights, as in nights.com, there is a series there called Neverending Nights that I made, and that was using the Neverwinter Nights game engine. So we made a machinima, and so in order to do that, I had bought a program called Fraps, like way back in the day. And so I had Fraps, and that's how I did Lighthouse. So if you watch my video of Lighthouse, you'll see it's using ScumVM, and it's a captured video. Fraps is able to capture ScumVM video or gameplay. So in Lighthouse, it's not a very big deal because there is not a lot of dialogue in Lighthouse. There's virtually almost none, really, except for at the beginning and near the end where you rescue the guy. But in Gabriel Knight 1, for some reason, what I was noticing, and I didn't notice until I'd already played most of day 1, that as the game progressed, for some reason, the dialogue and the animation was slowly starting to come off of time. So at the beginning of the game, it looks fine, but as the game progressed, like you would see, and it wasn't terribly noticeable, but it was like 5 seconds. So Gabe would say something, like you would hear the audio say something, and then 5 seconds later, you see his hands and mouth move. And like I said, it wasn't a big deal, but it was noticeable that this slowly off time thing was happening. And like I said, I was already near the end of day one when I, saved and was like, oh, something's wrong here. This is off. So by that time, I'm going to rewind a little bit. There is a clock that's up in the attic of Granny's house. And when you use this clock, and this might be where I'm missing one point, but there is no indication of how this clock works. So there is a number of symbols at the top. There's like a dragon, a lion, and a couple of different other things. And then you have the clock hands also. So when I was playing on this GumVM version, I literally was hoping that it was going to be on the hour. So I did the first symbol, moved it to 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way around. Moved it to the second symbol, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Moved it to the next symbol, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way around. And when I got to, see, even again, I forgot. When you watch my gameplay, you'll see I forgot again, because it takes like 2 or 3 tries. But I believe it's dragon at the top and then 3 p.m. Now, had it not been an hour mark, so like if it was maybe 3:10 or 3:15 or 3:30, the combination of like 5 symbols plus every possibility on that clock, that is a lot of guessing to have figured out how that clock works. So I'm sure somewhere in this game there's probably a hint as to how that clock works. Because when Gabe gets it, he says, "Oh, Grandpa, you old sly fox." As if Gabe kind of knew what he was doing versus the player literally just guessing. So, if there is somewhere in this game that explains how that clock works to have, I believe it's dragon at the top and then 3 o'clock, feel free to post it in the comments because I don't know where that's at. It was literally guesswork when I was playing this GumVM video. And then, like I said, even in this playthrough, it takes like 2 or 3 times. I think I remembered it was 3 o'clock, but I couldn't remember what symbol it was. So it takes 3 or 4 times and it finally got it. But if I would have used this GumVM video, it was literally about 20 minutes of me trying to figure out this clock, which I would have just done what I did with this commentary and sped up the video for that portion, because no one wants to sit there for 20 minutes and watch me try to figure out a puzzle. But if there is somewhere that describes how that clock works, I would love to know in the comments, because to me it seems like it's guesswork. And that seems like the amount of possibilities, which is literally 60 different minutes on a clock with like 4 or 5 symbols. You do the math as how many potentially options that is going to be. Anyway, going on to talk about the game more as to what it's doing now. Gabe finds this artist, his art gets blown away, and you find out that basically if you can get the paper back, he'll help you out. And so there's a kid who's dancing, and if you give, I should say, like on day 1, you get a coupon out of your register. You can probably get it on day 2 also. And you give it to the vendor that is near the kid. He'll give you a hot dog. You give the hot dog to the kid. The kid says, "Hey, since you helped me out, I'll help you out." So where the paper blows, the kid can actually reach and get it. So it's kind of cool how they very neatly, it's not one of those things where everything was really far away. Like all of this happens within the park. So, the paper blows away, gets stuck behind these bars. The hot dog vendor guy is right there. And then the kid who's dancing is right there. So it's all very close. So it makes it very easy. You're not going back and forth everywhere to figure out parts of the puzzle. One thing I'll say is if you're playing this game, definitely when you talk to Grace, anytime you learn anything new, go back to Grace and ask her to do research for you. Sometimes she can find something for you. Sometimes there is nothing for you to ask her. But if she has research for you, she can definitely add more to the story. So I can't emphasize enough, if you're playing this game, is to go through every conversation tree, even if you know that it's not going to really give you a clue, just because it's kind of cool to hear how some of these characters respond to things. And the nightmare that Gabe has, as you can tell, more and more of it is starting to reveal itself ever so slowly. So you'll eventually see pretty much the entire nightmare come out as one whole piece as the game continues to move along. There is a total of 10 days in this game. So and on each day, the first couple of days, the nightmare length kind of stays the same. But I think after day 4, more and more pieces start to reveal itself. Something I'm just thinking of just now. I did not test this, but I wonder if you call some of the numbers that are in the manual, like the Sierra helpline, I wonder if they have responses for that stuff. I imagine they do, because they kind of cover everything else. So if you've tried this phone thing in Gabriel Knight 1, and you've tried to call a number of different phone numbers and you found some cool ones, like maybe the Sierra helpline is somewhere in there and it has a response, feel free to let me know in the comments. I think that'd be kind of cool to try out if you know of anything cool that comes out of using the phone. Oh, and I will say, if you watch this gameplay and if at any time it's showing like the save games and it seems like it's stuck or it's not moving, if you've watched my other videos, I've talked about this, where I will, when the save games get full and basically it says you have to replace the save game, I alt tab out, take those save games, move them into a separate folder, and then tab back and then cancel and save, and then now I have an open thing to save games. So if you see that, just know that's what I'm doing. And so at this booth here, there is a woman, and she will dance for you. And as she dances with her snake, because snakes are definitely a thing here, you get her scarf. And when you look at her scarf, there is a snake scale on there, but it doesn't seem to be the same one from the murder scene. And so this chapel has a number of things. So like you can go here and pray and stuff like that. And if you look closely, there's a hole in that, and not this confessional booth, but the other one. Just keep an eye on that hole. You'll be using it later. So here, Gabe will get the outfit of preacher. Side note, you're going to actually also need the tie piece that goes with it, which is off to the side. Otherwise, Gabe's outfit isn't going to work. So after the artist reconstructs the paper, so you get 2 pieces of paper from what is written on Marie Laveau's thing, and you kind of start figuring out a couple of the different art that's around the murder scenes and stuff like that. You'll start to decode things. And let me say this, so during this presentation that this guy's giving, you're going to want to pay attention, especially when he talks about the small coffins, which we saw in Dr. John's Museum of Voodoo, because I just thought this was going to be this thing here, that what he's talking about, right before Gabe snoozes off and then has a dream about it, ironically. So it's a good indication that that thing is important. But I couldn't remember, but there is later on where you write your own message on Marie Laveau's tomb, and I couldn't remember how that thing was spelled. So I ended up restoring to watch the presentation again to get the spelling after I realized I have to write my own message on Marie Laveau's tomb, and it needs that thing. Oh, and speaking of that code, so when you decode the 2 codes, because there's one message on Marie Laveau's thing, and if you use your notebook to copy it, later on a second message appears, and if you use your notebook, you can compare the 2. And when it says that, it says, hey, you've decoded everything. You're only missing 3 letters. So for my own sake and sanity, basically I took the code, which is A, B, C, D, all the letters, and I put them with the alphabet symbol wise. So, like A, B, C. And as I did that, I realized you're not missing 3 letters like what they tell you. You're literally missing 6 letters. So that kind of established that what I thought I had to spell was correct, because the other 3 letters are not in what I needed. So I kind of figured out, okay, I'm on the right path, but you don't know. There's 3 symbols where it has a question mark, so you don't know what letter it is. And those are the 3 letters you don't know, even though technically you don't know 6 letters. So it's trial and error. And the good thing is, so if you use the first symbol, whatever, and it's not the right one, when you try to spell one of the words, Gabe will look at it and go, that doesn't seem right, and he erases it. So it's a process of elimination to figure it out. Now, it's weird that when Gabe says that doesn't look right and he erases it, to me that kind of already indicates that he knows what letters should be what if he knows it doesn't look right when you're using the wrong symbol. So why would the player not know? Like, they've given Gabe the knowledge that, hey, this doesn't look right, and he erases it. But then the player is left in the dark still, like still doing trial and error of like, well, this one, okay, it's not a Y, so maybe it's a U. Let me put it over here in this part of the word and see if it works there, and I'll put this one over there. So there is trial and error there in terms of finding that code. And you know what? Let me see if I can. I think I still have it saved where I deciphered the code for this somewhere on my machine, and I should probably share what the heck I'm talking about if I still have it. I think I still do. Give me a moment and I'll put it up here. So while he's talking to the Dixieland guy, it's gonna suddenly cut over to the code. So right there you can see the code, and you can see there's actually M, X, Y, Z, O, and U that are missing from the alphabet below. So it's not actually 3 letters, it's actually 6. But you can see that he says he finds translation symbols except for 3, but that's not correct. Anyway, that brief interruption, this guy comes in and he wants to buy the painting from Gabe for $100, which happens to be exactly how much Gabe needs to buy something, which is the crocodile head on top of that statue, or alligator. I can't remember if it's crocodile or alligator. Anyway, he needs it as a part of his voodoo costume. So as you learn more, like I said, as you talk to different characters and you start learning more, it's kind of cool to go back and talk to everyone and see what they have to say about different topics. And that is undoubtedly why I got so close to the grand total of the game, because I did look at everything and I did talk to everyone. So it still vexes me now where that one point is. And this beautiful woman who you're talking to is the same woman who Gabe briefly saw at the crime scene when she pulls up in the car. And Gabe is very much infatuated with her. This is the cop at the desk that I was talking about earlier. And she will play a very important part in Gabe's life. God, this game was so good. And here Mosley has a guy by the name of Crash, who's kind of like this low life kind of druggy guy, but he says that he knows something about the voodoo murders essentially, but he can't talk about it because the cops took him in. He's gonna die. They're always watching. They can communicate, and all this stuff. And you learn that they use you'll see various guys in various areas, like the drummer right outside this tavern, he's there. You'll see the drummer outside the museum, he's there. You see him in the park, he's there. And basically what they're doing is they're using their drums to communicate and send messages, and it's coded messages, which Gabe will eventually learn about and then you will be sending your own coded message using the drums twice, actually, in the game, if I remember correctly. So, and these two at the table are pretty fun. You eventually find out that one of them has lost every single time, and you find out that it's because he's sort of been cheating and using kind of some like voodoo hoodoo magic stuff. So, and there she is again. And we're now on day 4. So I think here's where things start getting weird, because as you can see outside, there is one of those guys not just playing drums, but he's literally just staring inside Gabe's bookshop. And when you tell him to go away, he doesn't care, he doesn't listen. And this is one of those limitations of games, right? Because if there was someone just being a creep outside my store and I had a female employee, or any employee, female or male, who felt threatened, I, as a person, would probably go out there and not just tell them to go away, but probably end up in a physical altercation to get them to leave. But in this game, you can't do that. You can just yell at them through the window and they don't care. And so here, you notice that the hot dog guy is not there anymore. If you go to, it's a beignet guy. We'll get back to that. But you see Crash at the hospital, or the cathedral, and you talk to him and you try to convince him to tell you more about it. And if you show him a few things, he'll finally actually open up about it. However, he is in a state that he is not going to survive the rest of this night. As it turns out, he is sickly ill, he's been poisoned, and he is dying rapidly. And there is nothing anyone can do to save him, pretty much. And he will end up dying after you have a discussion with him. But when you talk to him and after he passes, you can actually lift up his shirt and see he has a tattoo, which he actually mentions in the tree of conversation. And that tree, or that symbol of the snake, is basically how he gets in. People know that he's a part of their organization. They use him and stuff like that. So Gabe, right there, learns that he needs to do something similar. And if at any point when you look next to Grace when she's sitting at work, there is a briefcase. And when you look at the briefcase, it's her painting stuff. So you know she's got some painting skills, which comes in when it comes to painting something on Gabe's chest. And later on, I thought it was a mistake, but the photo reappears. But then when you look at it, Gabe talks about how Grace probably bought it with her own money to get it back. And throughout the game and throughout the days, you have family that is in Germany that is trying to get a hold of Gabe, learning that he is a part of their family, and you start figuring out that they are Schattenjägers, which means shadow hunters. And they warn him that he is in great danger, like they've sensed great danger around him. And he's like, well, yeah, people keep dying around me. And so Crash died, and now this poor college tutor has perished because of Gabe, technically. They know that he has talked to Gabriel and put an end to him. So here, after you pick up the break, you can start leaving your own message. We're not going to do that yet. And what we do learn is, like I was talking about the beignet guy who's at the Jackson Square thing, this officer actually brings up, hey, does anyone know when the beignet guy is coming back? So you know you have to do something. And here you discover that, I think this is the part where they talk about they've closed the case, even though they've technically not solved it, but they're closing the case because they think the voodoo murders, it's not related to voodoo. Whoever's doing it's not really into voodoo. And most of the people who are killed are out-of-towners who are like questionable people. So it's not really like a big deal to them. And if you ask him to reopen the case, he says he needs evidence of a few things. So one of them will be like who it is, who it might be, the different things. So you can show him things in the inventory, and he'll ask and tell you if that's good or not. So you'll need 2 scales to verify if voodoo is involved and who it might be. If you can find the symbols and stuff like that and what they mean, the history of them, which you can easily because the artist reconstructs it. Dr. John gives you information about it. So I die quite a few times when I enter in here because can't figure out what to do. But the fact that there is something that you can do, and that is basically just reach for the light switch, and the snake goes away, and then Dr. John says, "Oh, sorry, the store is closed." And Gabe says, "Well, maybe next time it's closed, maybe you should lock the door." And he goes, "Oh, I'll consider that next time." And so now we found 2 scales that are identical. The one from the murder scene and the one from the snake that just tried to kill you from Dr. John's. So now we have Dr. John's name. And so we know he's involved because the scales are the same. And here's what I'm talking about where you have to do that message, where it says you've translated it and you're only missing 3 letters when in actuality you're actually missing 6. So this is when I was still trying to figure out which letters are which. If you looked at the image when I posted it earlier, it actually has the key after my trial and error of figuring out what letter is what. This one isn't too hard as opposed to the clock thing. The clock thing was way more difficult. On this one, it's still fairly high, right? Because it's 3 letters and you have to use all 3 letters to spell what you need. And so it is a lot of trial and error, but I think I got it in 2 or 3 tries when I did it. And see, now we see the circle, and then we saw the dagger right before day 6. And by the way, there is a dead chicken in a cult or a voodoo symbol. And then one of the things you research is the drums, the raga drums, I believe they're called, or rasa drums. And you learn different messages and what the beats are. Now, I don't know why they have it in symbols like that, other than that's how they code it in the book when you actually have to spell out your own message versus 2 beat, 1 beat, 2 beat means this, 1 beat, 1 beat, 1 beat means this. I don't know why they did it in symbols, but it is what it is. And one of the things I should say that they talk about throughout is a holiday known as St. John's Eve. And it's a very predominant also voodoo religion. So you can tell that something's about to go down on St. John's Eve because the game is alluding to it as the day gets closer and closer. So Gabe knows that something's up, so he asks Grace to paint a snake on his chest. And when you go talk to the beignet guy, because the cop said, "Hey, I wonder if the beignet guy is going to ever come back," it is a hint that you need to send the beignet guy back to the cops, and he shows up and they leave. And the first time I wasn't fast enough, and restored to do it again. So I can't remember, I think it takes a few tries. But I think even if you're too slow, there's still a way to pass it. Like if both officers come in, or if the desk officer comes in, I think he starts to nod off at his desk or something like that. So even if you're too slow, you actually don't have to restore. It's a little more complicated because he nods off and then looks up. And when he nods off, you have to quickly go through the door and get past him. And once you get past him, even if you're just barely still within sight, usually he won't say anything. It's only if he catches you right at the door trying to get in. So you get a tracker from Mosley, and you put it inside that little coffin to basically track. Now, this is where I was kind of stuck for a brief moment because I knew I had to find where this cult thing was, but I was clearly missing something because on the map, the cult thing wasn't available yet. So since I restored, I have to get the whole chest paint thing again. And so I came to the murder scene thinking, okay, well, I just have to exit around here somewhere. But the swamp thing that you have to get to is actually its own map thing. I will say that though this game is very, very realistic in many regards, the thing with the cathedral and the underground thing, that was a little far-fetched. But most of everything else you see in here is looks very historically accurate and stuff like that overall. And this could also be, just real quick, where I may have missed one of my points. I don't know if I got the message 100% correct or if I was close enough. But after doing the drums, then the swamp opens up. And so you need to basically use the tracker that you put in the little coffin to find where this ceremony is at. And then once you do, you put on the crocodile and you find out that Dr. John is here, and he blows some stuff in your face and you have a vision, and she sees you and things go wrong, and you will find out when you wake up that Grace actually found you out there in the swamp, and she had followed because she was worried that something was up and that something was going to happen, and she's like, you have to get out of here, crap's getting real. And so Gabe will go ahead and call his family in Germany. And right now he looks, in the shadows, but you will see him fully a little bit later on in the game. Because he needs to get out and he needs to get more information about what is going on with, I believe the name is Tatello. So you find out that someone in Gabe's family has a very strong tie in their past to Tatello as well. And so things are coming full circle. And speaking of full circle, the symbol of the voodoo cult is it's pretty cool when you piece together what it is. Gabe will see it from the airplane, and I thought that was a pretty cool moment way back when. I was like, that's cool. But then, like I said, what happens just after and how it ties to the cathedral and what's under the cathedral, that felt a little far-fetched with how technological it was. So, and I get they establish that, she has a lot of money and all that stuff, but it was a bummer because they built this game so well. Like I said, all the characters are so great. The story is amazing, but the fact that the voodoo base is literally under the cathedral, and if it was just under the cathedral and it was just caves and looks really weird, fine. But they had a whole base with like lights and all this stuff under there with all these different rooms. And I don't know. That part felt like when you watch a great movie but they don't know how to end it. That's what that felt like. So yeah, it took nothing away from the game though. It's still an amazing game. I just wish it was just caves or something like that, versus a very fancy establishment beneath the cathedral. Because I'm not sure how they would have ever gotten away with it from a very religious cathedral to allow a voodoo cult to build a major base under the cathedral. And so we arrive at Germany. We're greeted by a woman who you discover Wolfgang left to go do something and he hasn't come back. So the message he pretty much gave her kind of felt like a final message and that he wasn't coming back. So the castle is Gabe's. But I already spoiled it. You're about to see him a little bit later after you do some research and find out where he went. So if you look, there's like a dagger on the wall, and if you go in here, there's these tapestries. If you look at the tapestries, Gabe says he can't figure it out. You can ask her about the tapestries, and she says they describe a ritual that the Schottenhagers do. So if you look, there's a scroll, which you find up in the other room. There's a purity thing, which you can get from the snow. You find a pair of scissors, and it's interesting because I don't know what the scissors apply towards the thing, but somehow it does. But Gabe cuts his hair, which seems very un-Gabriel-like. But still no key to that door. So what you end up doing is, if you look at the tapestries, you follow the order of the tapestry and you do the ritual. And what'll happen is she'll come in, say, you know what, don't worry about it, I'll clean it up. And then you suddenly have a dream of something that looks like a demon dragon kind of thing. And this part looks very dated. But he ends up having a dream about a key, and if you look right there on the table, there is suddenly a golden key, and when you go talk to her, she says, nope, I didn't put it there. I don't know what you mean. So clearly somehow something very magical is happening, but with that key, you're able to get into the library. Now, I probably spent, if you watch the gameplay, I think it's about 15 to 20 minutes, probably before I figured out what to do. Because it says, you'll look at a book and it says, oh, you can find more information in this book. And you have to go into each area of this library to find the next book that references it. And then you find out at the end a lot of information about this African voodoo tribe and this other tribe from the island that come together and basically form this new voodoo cult. And the one in Africa was known for being an extremely aggressive voodoo cult. So you kind of get the impression this is where it's all coming from, and Gabe is gathering a ton of information about it. I wasn't too much of a fan of this part of the game where you have to keep looking for the different books, but I get it. It's, it really helps build this idea that Gabe is doing the research and stuff like that. So I get it. I just hated going, okay, well, now I need to find this book, and then going through all the bookshelves, finding it. Okay, cool. Oh, now I need another book. Let me go through all the bookshelves again. So it's a little on the monotonous side, but wish it could have been done in a shorter way. And I will say, like, day 1 and 2 are both like an hour long when you watch the normal split up version, or if you watch the 11-hour version of this video. But all the days after that get pretty short. Like, I think most of them range about 45 minutes to an hour. But there's one of the days where it's like 24 minutes long of gameplay wise, so definitely gets shorter. So now we're at day 9. We've learned about this thing in Africa, a circle within a circle, similar to Gabe's dream. And there's these plates on the wall. Now, it wasn't until I found a few plates that had fallen off, so like that plate there, that I realized these plates need to go in a specific order. And I quickly realized as I found more and more plates that the plates that are actually on the wall are also removable. So you essentially need to remove them and then make so the one that's in the door doesn't come out. So you have a base for what that number is, and what you basically have to do is build a clock around this. So you have 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12 in that order. And you can do that because this one here is stuck. It doesn't come out. So if you look at that one, you get the number, and then you put the rest in order. And then in one of the rooms is a snake staff, which Gabe already picked up. And that will play a pivotal role in opening these doors. And it also plays a role in being a very difficult part of the game. Because what happens, we'll wait till it happens. So I will say in one of them, when you use the staff, it wakes up the zombies. And when that happens, it gets difficult. I die, as you see, a number of times. And then finally, you actually climb the vine and you get past them, and you see Wolfgang, who is fighting off the zombies and looking a little worse for the wear. There's a dead body in here, and he explains, oh, once you come in here, the zombies deactivate. They're only out there to protect the hallway, but once they come in here, their job as to protecting the hallway is over, because if you're in here, you're already inside. So they turn off here. So that's why there's a dead body there, which you would think you're going to need because, oh, look, there is a altar. Now, I will say the video here, the way the bars are, it looks like it's positioned above this thing, not so much really on the wall. So it looks like 2 poles with a circular bottom, but it's not. The 2 poles are actually against the wall, so you can actually pick them up, put them inside the thing, and you use it to turn and lift the bottom of this altar. And you need a living heart. When you go to do it, unfortunately, your grandfather, no, not grandfather, Wolfgang, ends up cutting out his own heart to make it happen. And so now we're on day 10, and Mosley, who had to go underground because when he looked into these voodoo murders after reopening the case, things started going wrong, and he was told to go on leave or else. So he kind of hides out in Gabe's, expecting that no one will look for him there. Which is odd because Gabe had basically promised Mosley that he would put him in the book about the voodoo murders, when Grace reveals that Gabe has no plan on doing it. But you would think if anyone knew about that, and maybe they don't, because Mosley does give Gabe some privileged information about the case, that the first place they would have looked is any connections that Mosley had if they were actually looking for him, which would have probably been Gabe. So if you go into the right confessional, you'll see a hole, use the staff, and it leads underground. So you definitely want to leave away from Mosley to get back to you. So make sure you leave enough items for Mosley to get back to you. One of them is going to be leaving the tracker there, and then the other thing is making sure to leave the staff there so Mosley can come back down. And side note, when you get the costume, make sure you also get the vest piece and stuff like that, because you'll see. I originally only picked up the mask thinking that's all I needed, because that's all Gabe needed last time with Crocodile Head. But that was not the case. And so this is what I was talking about with the voodoo cult, with their massive, beautiful, functioning like beds and lights, and looks like a mansion underground, right? Like with all these schools and computers and internet, whatever else. It just seemed very out of place that you would use a staff at the cathedral and then go underground and find a voodoo cult that has this incredible building set up. So eventually you'll find the circle, and you can play the drums and leave a new message, which essentially is for Dr. John to come to this room so you can actually go to where he's at and get a hold of his necklace, which you'll need. But then he comes out and he kills you. So you have to make sure you do it and kind of walk around so that you can make sure he doesn't find you so easily. And maybe the way I summoned Dr. John, maybe that's where I missed the point too, because that was pretty much a very, like, what would I say in this situation? Like, to get him away is like, hey, I need you to come now, or something like that. So as you're going through the room, you do find basically the area with a bunch of dirty money, and you can keep pocketing it as much as you want until Gabe's like, yeah, I don't need any more money. I'm good. Like, I get it. This is confetti or confetti. I get this is counterfeit, but I'll use it. So Gabe showing his morals. And then here you will find out that because I only have the masks, things are about to go very south when someone comes in the door. None other than Dr. Joan. So, yeah, died again. So, got the mask and also got the robes. So, this will help. And then Gabe uses the necklace that he got from his Wolfgang in Germany, and that helps wake up Grace. The amulet will be used quite a bit. So you give him, I think it's a boar, and then Gabe gets the wolf. Which is ironic, because in Gabriel Knight 2, Gabriel is investigating werewolves. And before Grace can be sacrificed, which is part of the plan, she plays the possum. You break out the thing, and then things just rapidly go south. She fights it, and Gabe tries to save her, but she willingly sacrifices to put an end to Toledo. or Toledo is Fast and Furious. But that's it. If you like it, please click like and subscribe. That's it.